In this lesson, we will learn 3 simple stitch techniques. The first technique we'll look at is just the running stitch, which is the most basic of all. The second is the loop stitch, and the third is the blanket stitch. After practicing these techniques, you will choose the best one and use that to create an interesting border frame for your previous print. Materials needed are 4 strips of thick card or paper with equally spaced holes. This can be any colour that's available to you. A hole puncher to make the holes, some thread, string or wool to sew with. The colour again depends on your resources at home. Some scissors, some glue and a picture that you want to frame. In this case, we're using the letter print from a previous art lesson. To begin the activity, once you've cut your strips of paper, bearing in mind there'll be 4 of them and they must be the right size, equal size to each other. I think these are about 5 centimeters width. You need to take your hole punch and just make sure that the holes are about equally spaced. So the first hole that you do, just place your finger where you want the hole in between those and just carry on down. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be exact measurement, but as long as they don't look too different from each other, that'll be fine. Let's begin by showing you the simple running stitch. So basically the length of the wool that I'm going to use is probably going to be about an arm's length. And I'm just showing you if you did want to use a needle, in this case we don't really need to because the wool itself is so thick, you can actually thread it by your hands or sew it by your hands. But if you are using a needle at home, then you just need to poke that through the loop of the needle and then bring that round and tie that into a loose knot. You'll need to cut off the string where you want it to end. Make sure that your string is measured out first and it's long enough. And then to begin the stitch, you can just basically push your needle, or with your fingers if you're not using a needle, push the thread through one of the holes. And here I'm actually going to use a bit of tape to secure the thread in place, or the wool in place, just so it doesn't move or come out of its place when we are sewing. If you were using fabric, then this would be a different method, but we're using paper today. So we go in and out, so as you can see it's alternating, which means different each time. So basically the method is up and over and down. So we're going down here, pull that through until it's tight, and then up through again and down, all the way until you get to the end. And on your last hole, we're going to just secure that down again with a little more masking tape. At the beginning of the video, I actually called this the wrong stitch. It's called the over stitch. So here we just secure the first part of it like we did with a piece of tape. And then literally you are just going in from the back, pushing the thread through or the wool through. Here again we're using our hands because it's such a thick piece of wool. And we're just literally looping that over the edge until you get right to the end. It's very, very simple. Because we're working with paper here, you don't want to pull too hard. If you pull too hard, then the paper will break. So just firm but gentle when you're pulling the thread through. So the blanket stitch is very similar to the overlap stitch, but the only difference is you leave this loop of space and then from behind you push through the thread, and that will give you a nice look and conceal the hem or the edge of the paper or fabric that you're working with. Again, be very careful not to pull too hard, as in this demonstration we're working with paper. So you're going to go from behind again. So each time with a blanket stitch, you always work from behind, pull through the thread, and then just before you get to the end of the thread, you leave a little loop, little space, and push the end of the thread through that loop underneath. To frame your picture, you can stick down the borders with some PVA glue or just a glue stick. As you can see here, I didn't think one layer was enough, so I decided to add a few more borders just with a simple running stitch. So to complete mine, I did an overlap stitch and a running stitch. The final result turned out pretty good, so with yours, have fun with it, experiment, use any colour you like and whatever you have at home, and just be creative.